part 2. Anyway, the point is, if I dwell on this phrase a little bit and say, I remember hearing the word parakletos, a Greek word. And here in Klein's dictionary, they're saying pei resh kuf lamed. That's the word pei vav resh kuf, pei resh kuf lamed. Well, so they add a lamed yod tet, leet. Kuf lamed is the word kol or voice, which to call. Pei resh, para, they're saying comes from beside, like a paramedic or a paralegal. Yod tav suffix is to give something a name, like Jebusite. The it is the yod tav tet suffix. So one who comes alongside, well, if that's the ruach of Elohim's job, and remember, Yeshua said he's going to give us the ruach to lead us into the truth. So I can sit here and say, okay, it's not my job to invent a truth. It's my job, though, as a human being. But see, I have to be careful putting in quotes the word human being, because in my mind, the word human being is a legitimate word. It's a legitimate concept. I'm a human being because that's English. But then what I have to realize is it's not that simple. There are certain people before us, generations ago, who invented the English language similar to a tar pit. Now in Los Angeles, in a place called La Brea, there's tar pits. And there's so much, we might say, petroleum, oil, tar, deep enough, but water would float on the surface. And animals from, let's say, the dinosaur days, it was actually more of the Ice Age, would go there and they'd see the water. They were thirsty because Los Angeles is kind of a hot, dry place. And so they go there and they step into the pond of water, only it's tar with water floating on the surface. They try to drink the water and they get stuck in the tar and they start screaming. And then predators would come and jump on them to eat them in their struggle. And so the tar pit is like a couple 100 feet deep, and they found all kinds of bones of animals. And so they set up the Museum of Natural History there in La Brea, California, down in LA, where they pulled out all these bones. And so you'll have bison and camel and horses and elephants, saber-toothed cats, birds, and they're all in the tar pit. It looked like good water. Seemed like a good idea at the time, but it was a tar pit. Don't drink out of that pond. How are they supposed to know? They weren't given human logic. But what I've found is that Black's Law Dictionary, the King James Bible, Webster's Dictionary, it's almost like those, if you know, those are almost like life preservers or a canoe where you can paddle through the tar pit and not get snared. Or maybe you have to sell your soul to the devil to buy that special canoe to paddle through. And there's a verse that says, hey, we're not afraid of the coming disaster. We made a deal with the devil. We made a deal with death in hell, death in the grave, and it's not going to hurt us when it comes. And then that's where Yahweh says, are you kidding me? I'm going to send you such a flood that it's going to take away you and death and hell. They're going to throw you all into the burning lake of fire. I'm kind of mending it a little bit there, but the people of Israel who thought they had made a deal with death and hell, so they're not afraid. He said, oh, you better be afraid because you got nothing. You've been lied to. So what I'm saying is, how do we know whether we've been lied to? How do we know whether the ism we believe, whether it's Christianity, Judaism, Islam, Hindu, Buddhist, and like this friend was saying, hey, go back and look at the ancient languages, Sanskrit. Look at the cuneiform, look at the Egyptian hieroglyphics. And people have found evidence of, there was a thing in Turkey, it was way older than Stonehenge, and it looked like the first ever archaeological sacred place 10,000, 15,000 years old or something. And it's like, that can't be. You look at the chronology of the history of the generations in the Bible, and we've only been here 6,000 years. According to that reckoning, but was there something before that? I don't know. There's evidence that somebody has been on this planet, whether they were humans, maybe Adam has only been here 6,000 years, but there's evidence of sentient beings, of, let's call them people with culture, building architecture on the face of the earth for thousands of years. I don't know. I don't know who does the numbers, and I don't know whether we can even trust any numbers. I don't know. All I know is, hey, I exist, like Adam waking up one day and saying, well, where'd I come from before this? I don't know, but here I am. And hey, here's some words. Here's the treetops moving in the evening, and I'm having some sort of dialogue with an invisible or visible. I don't even know I don't know what they was having. I don't know about people who see Yeshua and fly up into the heavens and have angel visits. I don't know. All I know is that here I exist. And what do I have? Sentient logic? You don't want to be Gnostic. Oh, you turn into Gnosticism. You're out of here. It's like, gosh, where's the line? Don't go to the right or to the left. But the giver of the words of Hebrew says, you can trust these words. Now, if I look at Revelation, that was Revelation 7:10, where it says, chew up the words that are written with ink. And pertaining to the plot clearly is contained pork. Solving a problem, dismantled, taken to pieces. The interesting thing, if you look in this particular, this is this one. If you look in the Stones Tanakh, it says Parashah. That's a chapter or dividing. But see what this is? Peresh Kuf. This is a park. That means divided into chapter or section. Well, that's just Hebrew. But it's translated in this one as being the word salvation. Why? Is it a chapter or is it salvation? Salvation belongs to our Elohim. The chapters belong to our Elohim. Michael Hoggard, the last talk I saw at the Prophecy Club, he came saying the King James Bible is the one and only word of God rightly divided into the order of the books and all the chapters and verse numbers. And that was his whole talk, saying you can trust that. It was of divine origin. The word pork, does it mean salvation or does it mean rightly divided? But see, if it means deliverance, set free, rescue, broken off, dislocated, remember, it wasn't good that Adam was bad. It wasn't tov that Adam was bet dalit, separated, alone, broken off, not like any other creature. Adam was bad, bet dalit, bada, separated. The word kadosh means separated. Adam was kadosh compared to all the other animals, uniquely other, exclusive, not just another animal. He didn't evolve from apes or other creatures. Similar word to Peresh Kuf. So when Yahuwah Elohim says to his people Israel, sons of Abraham, don't eat pork. Pork? Nah. See, Nun Aleph. Either pork, please, Nun Aleph. Or I'm playing with the words in English, Nun, N-A-H, nah means no. But here, Nun Aleph means yes, please. Pork? No, I'm not a pork eater. I'm not a pork eater. He said, if you eat pork, it'll abominate you. Don't eat it. That's what he said to his people. And if somebody could said, I'm not that people. I'm the people of the New Testament. He told us we can eat whatever we want. Who told you? The guy who claimed to know better than the one who was talking to the Jews in the Old Testament. Well, it wasn't just the Jews, it was all of Israel. And so like being swindled by some sort of guy on the internet, says, hey, your computer's been hacked. It has? By who? By me. By the guy who's trying to suck money out of my account. Don't turn off your computer. I got to sit there and calculate some stuff so I can pull stuff out. It's like, are we being had by the same kind of tactic? If fundamentally, Yahweh says, I designed the universe, and so I designed the universe so that certain things you eat are food, they're good for you, they're healthy for you, and certain things you eat are degrading, abominable, will ruin you. They'll shut down your body functions so that you can't think, you can't process. Pork's one of them. Shellfish is one of them. They have their job. They clean up the environment. Oysters, you throw oysters in water and it'll take out all the toxins and even chemicals. Just don't eat the oysters. We can eat whatever we want. Oh, really? That sounds like the voice of the Nachash, the serpent, the one who's trying to ruin you. Oh yeah, but no, Jesus said it was okay. Really? Why would Jesus say it was okay? That don't think. Don't think. I thought he told us to think. Now there's somebody telling me not to think. So what am I going to do? I got to think for myself. So if somebody says, I should check out all these other religions, what are their philosophies? What do they have to say? I was talking to somebody the other day, and her mother, who's a good Christian, told her, don't even think about, don't look at, don't read the books of, don't go visit the churches or the synagogues or the temples of other religions, or else you'll burn in hell. Don't even look, you'll burn in hell. Like Lot's wife. Don't look back. Look back and turn into a pillar of salt. Boom. You were raised a Christian. You got to believe you're like the Christians do, or else you're going to burn in hell. Is that true? If you don't stop and look at whether the Christian thing is accurate, well, you'd never keep the Sabbath day because the Christian thing doesn't regard the Sabbath, unless they're SDAs, but SDAs are wrong anyway. They got Ellen White, and at least according to the Baptists and the Presbyterians, their SDAs are wrong. Unless you're at Seventh-day Baptist, it's like, it gets very confusing. Who's supposed to stop and think? And even if you do stop and think, where is the measuring device? So I could sit here and say, listen, I don't have to try to imagine where's the measuring device because I'm the receiver who's the proactive generator of all information. Elohim, it's his job to give us something. Well, if I can read here that that crowd of people are saying salvation belongs to our Elohim. Well, there's this other thing in verse 7, verse 2 and 3. Here, I'll read it out here just as a reference. Then I saw there's verse 2. I saw another messenger who came from the rising of the sun. He had the seal of the living El, and he imposed, that's to break into it again, similar to that other one of calling out in a loud voice. Kufayan, different word, but similar. To the 4 messengers, don't damage the earth or the sea or the trees until I place a mark on the foreheads. Okay, what does that mean? We talked about that a couple of weeks ago. How do you get a mark on your forehead? Well, the word for seal is het tav mem. So I've just taken a couple words here. I'm not writing down the whole thing, just and he says, do not damage the earth. No, wait a minute. The guy who came from the rising of the sun. That's where I picked this up. Who came from? So it's Dalit Samik Lamed Kuf. Well, Samik Lamed Kuf, and we talked about this a couple weeks ago, means a cache of arms hidden. In other words, if you have weapons, you don't put them out on the table where somebody else is going to pick them up and run off with them. You hide them so that if bad guys are coming, you know where to go to get them. And some things you don't leave sitting around. That's that word, Samik Lamed Kuf. But it also means raised, lifted, removed, paid off, or died. If you pay off your mortgage on your house and now you don't owe anything, you pay off your car that you had taken a loan against. That's the same word, raised or lifted. Mem nun means out of or away from, and then mem dalet nun het yod. Well, nun het is Noach, like the word Noah. It means to descend or comfort, rest. Wait a minute, from the raising of the sun, is that the east or is that the setting of the sun in the west? The next word is sun, S-U-N. In Hebrew, it's shemesh, shin mem shin aleph. Well, shemesh means sun, and so this says from the raising of the sun, rising of the sun. Okay, so you have to go back and say, Samik Lamed Kuf is to raise or lift, mem nun from out of the mem, the place of dalet, of nun het yod, setting, or set down. Well, is that where the sun is set down, so it's from the east, or is it where the sun sets, which is in the west? So you can't tell. So the translator is just going to make up, oh, let's just say it's from where the sun rises, from out, because it's mem nun, out of and away from. So lifted up out of, so that's got to be, so in other words, you can't define the word mem dalet nun het yod unless you look at dalet samik lamed kuf and mem nun. And it's because it's talking about the sun, shemesh. Yeah, but what if that whole thing is if it means hidden like a cache of arms, hidden like a treasure box, out of, see the mem dalet nun het yod. Het yod is the word life. Nun het means led, guided, or directed. Mem dalet nun is the word that means to judge or contend. And mem dalet is where we get the word mode, or something tailor-made to fit. So if I break down the spelling of the words into bits, like in verse 10, chewing on the words and breaking them into shreds like a rat will do to your framing of your house, and breaking it down into the little pieces, like pork, dismantled, separated into parts, which are the letters. If I apply that to this, then the modality by which I can judge life being led, guided, and directed. Well, Moshe, in fact, the word shin mem shin aleph, mem shin hey is where you get the word Moshe. It means to be drawn out. Moshe was drawn out of the water by the princess of Egypt. So shemesh, shin being a prefix, can mean that which belongs to. So now instead of me saying the sun is rising, or from where the sun has set, now it's rising up, I can say you can draw out of the spelling of words how we were led, guided, and directed. And by that, it's our obligation to apply our minds to judge and contend, because the very next word after shemesh is vav aleph yod tav, which means to spell words. And lamed hey means belonging to this, belonging to her. This is hers. This is her, like the metaphorical she, the metaphorical feminine, like the name of a ship is always in the feminine. Why is that? And it's like, well, the next word, het tav mem aleph. If het is a container, tav mem is the word that means pure, perfect, artless, naive. The ship, remember the word for ark, box, trunk, tav, bet, hey, like a ship, like the hull of a ship, that container wherein, like het is a container, het's a fence. Het's not exactly a word for fence, but het is a pictogram of a fenced-in area. So the fenced-in area, and I'm going to read the sentence backwards here, the fenced-in area wherein is the spelling of words such that you can draw out the mode, the modality. Remember, mem dalet is also where we get the way of custom fit, like tailor-made suit, suited to mode, conduct, manner, way of being raised and lifted and removed, like they were raised out of the slavery in Egypt. How do we get raised out of the lies and the deception? The pure truth is hidden behind this chet. Then there's the word dalet, aleph, lamed, hey, of Elohim, het, yod, aleph. Well, het, yod is life. So they're saying the seal of the God of life, the seal of the living God. Or see, yeah, those are the words that mean daleth, aleph, lamed, hey, aleph is of El, of God, and then het, yod, life. So that must be the living God. So that must be the seal of the living God. I can look at those words and say, I can appropriate a definition rightly that those words mean those things. And then in my mind, I'm going to assemble the sentence to make sense. And then I'm going to write that sentence in English. And what I found is that if you try to take the words from this Aramaic that I've written down and say, I know what those words mean, but it doesn't sound right like that. So let's write the words in Hebrew. That's what this book sounds like. So in my mind, what I'm saying is that if the Aramaic is more correct, even in its convoluted porkna, instead of Yeshua, salvation, this has the word salvation, Yeshua, but porkna isn't salvation, but porkna means, that's verse 10, and we're looking at verse 2 and 3 here. I'm jumping around a little bit, but what I'm saying is you go back into saying the hidden treasure where the armament is. And that word hidden armament is also the word beet, where you have the beet that grows under the ground and you have the sprig that comes up. You can eat the beet greens, but the real treasure of the beet is underneath. And like beet juice can be used as ink, the worker in ink, dalet yod tav. I'm just comparing words in 7:10 with 7:2 and 3. We were led, guided, and directed by words that could be written in ink. And if you chew up those words and dismantle the structure of the word into the component parts, which are the spelling of words by the letters, the pure truth is hidden in that container. And that's where life is. And then in verse 3, aleph, or ayin dalet mem aleph, ayin dalet means until, dalet mem means similar or silent. Don't hurt anything until we have sealed. We have sealed as dalet nun het tav vav mem. Well, het tav vav mem is the word sealed. Dalet nun, we have nun het tav. If you look at those three letters in the middle, it means quiet rest, descending, pressed down, inferior, landed flat. Don't harm anything. Hold off those four angels until we have sealed Lamed Obadiah, the servants of Elohim, dalet aleph lamed hey aleph, upon their foreheads, bet ayini haun. Well, see, it's not just the word forehead like what's written in here. And we talked about this a couple weeks ago. Bet yod tav means to be taught, trained, and domesticated. It's the word house. The word between is bet yod nun, which is a derivative of to construct and understanding. So what is understanding? Just to comprehend how things are built. Tav bet nun. Tav bet hey has to do with straw, or the structure, like putting rebar in concrete, or straw, like pieces of straw that look like lines that you write letters, that you scribe letters with. And forehead, Ayin it means weigh carefully, measure precisely, balance determinably. The word used in this book, mem het, zadi het vav tav, mem zadi het, you look in the dictionary, it means dry, clear, pure, shining bright. Well, that's not the word forehead. I got an extra large forehead. How can this be dry, clear, pure, shining bright? That's the word, because it's the big, wide open place. Into the clear, wide open. Is it their foreheads? Is that the seal of the of our Elohim? Or is he saying, in the spelling of words, clearly, wide open, so that nobody can mess with it and wonder, gee, is it finally the truth this time? We will be able to weigh, measure, balance, shining bright. Here is the truth. And why is it the word het tav mem means sealed, but it also means baker? It's the seal of Elohim, het tav mem, baker, one who bakes bread. There's a famous story in the Bible about a baker. It's in Genesis 40, verse 22. Joseph was put in prison, Pharaoh's prison of Egypt, and there was also in there two of Pharaoh's servants, custodians, that you might say. One was the cupbearer and one was his baker. I mean, two pretty close to the Pharaoh. Both of them easily could poison the Pharaoh. And there was apparently had been somebody suspect of a mutiny, of doing something wrong. And so they were both thrown in jail. And those two men had dreams. And then Joseph interpreted the dream. And he said the cupbearer would be restored to his position and the baker would lose his head. Well, that's what happened. The baker ended up being found guilty. Guilty of what? Some sort of criminal offense. The cupbearer was found to be true of heart. The baker was found to be corrupt, and he was killed, executed by the Pharaoh. How can I plug this in? An interesting thing about David Foreman is that he says, and I've heard this from other people since him, if this is one interesting way that the Bible works, the scripture, the Torah, the Tanakh, consider it all. When you read a certain theme, you look at where else was that type of thing talked about, and you can bet that there's a connection. So why was Rachel weeping for her children? Cry not, weep not, Rachel, because of what you accomplished, you will be given peace and rest and merit in the heavens. What did she accomplish? What did David Foreman say? You go back and he said, there's only one story where we see any real interaction. Was Leah allowed to marry Jacob on purpose just to get the 12 tribes, just to set that whole thing up? We don't know. Did Elohim manipulate the circumstance with Abraham to bring forth Ishmael from Hagar? I mean, twice Hagar had an angel visit keeping Ishmael alive. The word Ishmael means Elohim hears. Why didn't Abraham conveniently get an angel visit before being with Hagar? Says, no, don't do that. You'll ruin everything. It didn't happen. You see, stuff happens and we don't know why it happens, but Elohim's got stuff going on that doesn't seem to make sense according to certain doctrines. So Abraham didn't do anything corrupt. It wasn't his own lust that drove him to be with Hagar. And Yahweh conveniently didn't happen to mention that, oh, by the way, it'll be through Sarah. No, that came later. He told him that. Okay, well, so Jacob ends up having these two women as wives who were sisters, and they each have handmaids who Bilhah and Zilpah, and boy, they were just big trouble. But at one point, see, Rachel couldn't get pregnant for whatever reason, and I think it was Reuben, the firstborn son of Leah, had found some mandrake. Well, it was some type of a fertility herb, whether it was an aphrodisiac or just promoted fertility. Either way, it's like, come on, you've already got some kids. Tell you what, Rachel says to Leah, can I have some of that? And Leah just gets mad at her and says, look, you've been keeping my affection of my husband from me. And it said, yeah, just turned into this quite a conflict. And Rachel quickly devised a peace plan. She said, tell you what, I'll buy him from you. We'll just give them to, I'm going to buy those mandrakes from you. And what I'm going to give you is that tonight's supposed to be my night with Jacob, but you can have him. You can have him tonight. But just, I'll trade you for that so that hopefully I can get pregnant one of these days. And Leah ended up getting pregnant, apparently that night, with another son. But the point is, what David Foreman had said is, what did she accomplish? She realized how to bring peace to a long-standing, maybe 20-year feud with her sister. Well, what was the problem with the baker and the wine steward? We've got some sort of corruption going on. Somebody is trying to kill the Pharaoh, and nobody knows who it is. It's this one or that one. We've got two voices going on. There's truth and there's deception. Where's the truth? What's going on here? Where's the truth? What do we have? For the servants of Elohim, la abed da elah, bet ain yahon. Where is there something clear, bright, shining that the servants of Elohim can say, this is the voice of our Elohim, and this is not? Is the voice of the true Elohim, the creator of the universe, is that in Hinduism, Buddhism, Taoism, Shintoism, Islam, Christianity? I don't know. But if I look back at Genesis 1, it starts off saying, in the beginning, Elohim created the heavens and the earth. Well, that's a pretty good place to start. I mean, who's Elohim? We haven't talked about that yet. But in the very beginning, so if you say, well, I don't know if that was the beginning, I think I'd like to believe in evolution, the Big Bang, the spontaneous eruption from nothing. And it's like, okay, if you want to believe that, you're done. No more conversation. Goodbye. But at least here it's saying, in the beginning, Elohim created. So in the beginning, there's an Elohim. Whatever that means is the intelligent designer, the intelligent and capable source of all that exists. And he actually constructed and built everything else that is. Not just else, meaning besides him, he somehow causes himself to sustain existence. Oh, well, that's quite a concept. We're going to start right there. Well, that's where Genesis 1:1 starts. Like I said, it's a very good place to start. So do the other religions go there? I don't know. I haven't, but why should I even check that out if I'm perfectly good with where this starts? Wow. I'm perfectly good logically saying that the source of the universe built this place, and now he's going to tell us something about it. Okay. Is that Judeo-Christian centric? Okay. Let me start there. I got to start somewhere, and that just happens to be where I start. That's where I was raised. Okay, but I'll start here. If I find some corruption, I'll maybe think otherwise, but let me just start there. Now, Genesis 1 goes on to tell us 7 days. A list of things accomplished in a sequence of 7 days. Why not 6 days or 8 days or 10 days or 12 days or 144 days? I don't know. There was no humans around. There was no politics. There was no religion. But the disclosure from the Elohim of creation says, I did this in 6 days, and I did something different on the 7th day as a sign, as a stamp, as an insignia, as an autograph. Just so you know, that's mine. I'm the guy who did these 6 things, and on the 7th day, this is my autograph. This all is for a reason. It means something. It's not arbitrary. And just so you know, that's my identity. Now, if I read Genesis 1 like that, then I can say, well, who is this guy? Somehow his identity is embedded within those 7 days accomplishment. But I don't know how to read that. But I can bet there's something in there, because he said that has something to do with him, because he goes on to validate it in the next book of Exodus. Go up to Exodus 20, 10 Commandments. I am Yahweh, your Elohim. I just brought you out of Egypt. That's kind of like saying to Adam, good morning, Adam. Huh? What? You had no consciousness before. I'm the guy who just made you, just so you know. Huh? I'm made? Oh, hey, what do you know? I exist. How about that? I exist. I'm the guy who just made you. Oh, well, thank you. Who are you? I'm the guy who just made you. Okay. And he says, just so you know, don't listen to any other voices. Don't have any other Elohim. Don't make any other little dolls, idols, figures, giants, monsters, or whatever for yourself. And remember my day. My day, that's my identity. Oh, okay. That's kind of like the same thing he said in Genesis 1. And then when he goes to Leviticus 23, he says, I'm going to outfit myself in these 8, you might say, garments of majesty. A crown, a robe, fancy shoes, a certain ring. Only these were 7 moedim, accoutrements of garment, of majestic. They say something. They're projecting an image of reference. In Exodus 25, shortly right after the giving of the 10 Commandments, he says to Moshe, come up here. Now, there's some people who think that Moshe invented the Torah all by himself. He sat there and thought up these interesting things. Now, think about this for a minute. Did Moshe write, in the beginning, the Elohim created the heavens and the earth, and on the first day, let me see, what's he going to do? The first day he said, let there be light. That's a pretty good place to start. Let there be light. Did Moshe invent that, or did Elohim tell Moshe, look, nobody knows how this happened. I'm going to give you the story, how it went. Or did Adam and Hua know? Did they tell their descendants? Did Noah already know the Genesis 1 story when he got on the ark? Did Noah tell Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and did they tell their kids? And did Abraham know the Genesis 1 story? I don't know. I could assume maybe he did, but let's say he did. Did they speak Hebrew? Some people think, well, Sanskrit's older. Not necessarily. All the languages came after the flood, and according to the Tower of Babel story, there was one language before, and then there's broken into 70 different languages. So what was the language before? Nobody knows. Isaac Moseson suggests it was called the Edenic language, coming from the Garden of Eden, which looks just like Hebrew. He doesn't call it Hebrew because he's a Jewish guy, and they'd think he was just being Judo-centric. But the point is, if it's Hebrew, nobody can prove it. Nobody knows. And the book of, I think it's Jasher or Yovelim, Jubilees, says that an angel visited Abraham and said, it really is Hebrew. Here, pick up Hebrew. Oh, okay. So if Abraham picks up Hebrew, which is 500 years before Moses, did Moshe speak Hebrew? Well, some people say, no, he spoke Egyptian. But Moses knew other languages because he was an officer of the court, Pharaoh's household. Did he know Hebrew? Did Hebrew exist as a language? If it existed as a language, could it be written? Not necessarily. They might have spoken it. I mean, if the Canaanites were speaking Hebrew or some form of Hebrew, if the Canaanites wrote Hebrew, nobody knows that. They were told, I'm going to try to go fast here. We're getting near the end, but I'm trying to wrap up a whole bunch of history there as a puzzle, just so you know. Authorities tell us that the Phoenicians, the area of Lebanon in the era of 1000 BC, invented the Hebrew alphabet, the Phoenician alphabet, in about 1000 BC, which was David and Solomon's era. But Moshe was told to write all the words of Elohim 6 chapters before Elohim himself wrote with his own finger on the tables of stone. Now, if Moshe wrote all the words of Elohim in Egyptian, you can't do that. You can't write the words of Elohim with Egyptian hieroglyphics, because their hieroglyphics include pictures of their deities and are referenced, given meaning by their deities. Cuneiform that the Assyrian Sumer area was using were wedge-shaped that you pushed into clay. But you see, the words of Paleo-Hebrew are pictures, pictographs, some of them similar maybe to Egyptian hieroglyphics, but each one of them in the Paleo-Hebrew reference is, according to John 1:1, a couple thousand years later, a reference of Yahweh Elohim. Yahweh Zavot, the Elohim of Israel. That the word Zavot, Zadi Bet Aleph Vav Tav, translated army, legion, host, is also the blossoming of every letter into manifesting its essence, to be appreciated by one who will consider it. And that when he was claiming to be Yahweh Zavot, it's not just captain of forces, master of legions, but it's the one who has blossomed his reality, his identity, and his agenda of what is he, who is he, and what is he doing in the specific letters of the alphabet, which you use to spell words with. The Aleph Vav Tav that you Aleph Yod Tav, the Debars with, or the Yod Tav Bet, the words as if the word is a trunk or a ship carrying cargo of letters. If the Hebrew alphabet already existed, or the Hebrew words already existed, maybe they hadn't been written yet. Because if they think the Phoenicians wrote them, and that's in 1000 BC, if Moshe must use Hebrew letters to write the words of Elohim, because those are his words, then Moshe had to have letters to write with 7 chapters before the finger of Elohim wrote with his finger on tables of stone. So Elohim didn't invent the letters unless he let Moshe comprehend what he was then going to write. Where would Moshe, if Moshe, let's assume, knew the Hebrew language that Abraham had, that the Canaanites had, the Egyptians were speaking Egyptian, but the Egyptians had something written, hieroglyphs, and the Sumers had cuneiform. Let's say Moshe knew both of those, but there was no Hebrew letters. Maybe. At the burning bush, Moshe was herding goats and sheep. And then he encounters Hasna, Hey Samak Nun Hey. But I can look at that word, the bush, Hey Samak Nun Hey, and say, the Hey, organized engineered structure, Samak, and the meaning, Nun, expresses, well, that spelling of words. I can see in the word bush the formula in the letters Hey Samak Nun Hey, the Samak Nun, orthographic projected meaning. Well, that's what a word is. So if Moshe understood how to speak Hebrew, he would know there was 22 consonants. Ab, 2 sounds. Abagada, 4 sounds. If you could sit there and take every single Hebrew word that exists and realize there's 22 consonants, I mean, how hard is that to think that? Or to teach that to your offspring? Even if they didn't write it, even if they didn't write them down, Moshe, Exodus chapter 3, what was the Melech, the messenger that came through the Hasna burning bush? the bush, hasna, he could have written down all the orthographic shapes of letters right there. He could have. There's no proof that he did, because he's now on a pretty busy schedule, talking to the Pharaoh, the 10 plagues, bringing him out of the wilderness, crossing the river, crossing the Yom Suf. When would he ever have time to sit down and calculate the orthography? Unless it was kind of downloaded to him. But if he did calculate the orthography, that would have put a pretty good push. Hasna. It's all right there. Hey, Samik, Noon, hey. Samik and Noon. The orthographic structure, like a tree, like a menorah, lit up with meaning. Well, that's every letter. Every letter is a shape with a meaning. How many sounds in the Hebrew alphabet? 22. Write them down. Organize them. Is there a priority, or is it just a collection? Elohim, the creator of heaven and earth. Well, if Elohim, if that's the Aleph in the creation bet, the cosmos, the house, the container, that's Aleph and Bet. Let's start with Aleph and Bet. So who came up with the 22-letter sequence? Nobody knows. It might have been Moshe. It might have been that he did it, that he was given something. And the people that think that Moses was so smart that he came up with all this, why is the 7th letter to be cut off? Well, there's a package of 7 cut off. And then Chet, the 8th letter of the fence, that's starting a new package. There's a group of 7 cut off, Zion, weapon, and then package Chet 8. What do you know? There's 7 days of creation. 8 starts something new. That's part of the design. Did Moshe invent that? Or is that Yahweh's design? Remember, Yahweh claims that the 7th day is his, and he claimed it was his before there was ever he made Adam and Hua on day 6, but he declared day 7, but he had that in mind. He planned that. Remember, if there was this word before there was ever a creation, then he had to invent this word. And if this word's the Hebrew alphabet, John 1:1, that Elohim invented, determined, decided, and then used to project all that exists, then he had to decide that there was 7, a package of 7. The 7th is a distinctive cut off. And then in this next group, starting with the Chet, there'd be a series of 7 lining up with, end up lining with the Zadi. That's the Mishkan pattern. But then when he said to Moshe, come up here, Exodus 25, Moshe goes up to Mount Sinai, and Moshe says, wow, this is an incredible place. And he says, here, see this pattern, Tabanit, of this Mishkan? You make sure that you build the one on earth. Oh, okay. And then so there's these plans. Was Moses thinking, I'm going to calculate this to fit with the Hebrew alphabet that Abraham knew? Or I'm going to design the Hebrew letters so that this has something to do with that. Or I'm going to make sure that the series of the 7 days of creation all happens to fit. And that's Exodus 25. And then in Leviticus 23, where Yahweh says, let me tell you something, Moshe. Back when Abraham was going to sacrifice Isaac, that happened to be on a certain day. Oh, it was? Oh, what day was that? Do you guys even know? Yahweh knows, but did Moshe know? And he's going to say, oh, and by the way, the day that Noah went into the ark or came out of the ark, that was on a certain day, and this was on a certain day. And oh, really? Was that common knowledge? Could Moshe have fit together that kind of world history where the critical events happen on certain days, and it fits this thing called a Mishkan, a tabernacle, a pattern that he claims he was shown in the heavens, and he turned around and then designed and told these guys, Betzalel and Aholiab, that they should make these articles for the tabernacle, the Mishkan dwelling. And it happens to also line up with the sequence of 7 days. And Moshe was also trying to wrangle the attitudes of 3 million people with the Pharaoh running after him. Did Moshe really do all that? Or is it from Elohim? And if it's from Elohim, and then you realize all the letters of the Hebrew are the words of Elohim, all of which speak of Elohim. And so if Moshe is going to write the words of Elohim, 6 chapters, 7 chapters before Yahweh wrote with his finger, then Yahweh writing with his finger using the same letters authenticates, validates, establishes that alphabet, that's a lot of coincidental correlation. And then to all of a sudden see in Daniel chapter 12 that Daniel, hide the words and seal the book. Okay, well, there's an aleph, there's a plan, and you can go through 22 like cogs on a wheel. Click, 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 click. I can see the 22 letters hidden by meaning, like a treasure map. And for Yeshua to sit down, Matthew 5, Sermon on the Mount, and say, blessed are the poor in spirit. Theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Well, that's like the poor, the ones suffering under some kind of a poverty, put to the weapon of denial of lack. And yet here's the het of all provision. Thematically, there's this picture, and guess what? It all fits. It all fits. This Mishkan pattern, it all fits. If I think about what Yahuwah said to his people Israel in this language, I can think, I can weigh, measure, balance, consider, look closely. It all works. It all works. It all makes sense. It makes so much sense that anything to the contrary of what was written about what he said. So now there's a correlation between voice and orthography, writing shapes of letters. The spelling of words is not arbitrary. It's not that those people who run the English language have used it to trap us in a tar pit with Black's Law Dictionary and Webster's Dictionary and the King James Bible. But this seems to be absolutely pure, clean truth that one can depend on, that one can count on, that one can trust. And that all of a sudden Jesus seems to be a slippery angel of light, phantom serpent, brother of the devil, that, whoa, but Yahusha by definition has to be the word incarnate. And the word incarnate then is the embodiment of the Torah, the embodiment of the Moedim, the embodiment of the Mishkan, the embodiment of the truth in chesed, in kindness, and in tom, pure perfection. So Yahusha has to be the het, or the tav mem within the het, his body, his being, his ruach, his essence, trapped within the het, is the seal of het tav mem. And when this angel says, put that on their foreheads as the teaching of one of the household, which is comprehensible, logical, reasonable, you can weigh, measure, balance, calculate, clear, shining bright, clarified and explained, not deceived, not entranced, bewitched, befuddled, bamboozled, bewildered. Where the baker, for whatever reason, was found to be a culprit and put to death, the cupbearer was given back his job. But the Pharaoh had to know what the heck was going on here. Why can I pull that story back into this story? Like Rachel finding out how to get along with Leah. I see the problem. You think I've ripped off your husband? Take your husband today. You can have my place with him. How does Jacob ever resolve with Esau? How does Isaac ever resolve with Ishmael as the sons of Abraham? How does millions of people, an uncountable number, ever get their robes white in the blood of the Lamb? By being similar to what he said. So in the Aramaic, I can see the phrase blood of the Lamb, bedama da amara. Revelation 7:14. It made them white. The word white is het vav resh. In this translation, white, clear, evident, clarified. And the ego, the I am, the moaning, the sorrow, the grief of being lied to, of losing our position, of not having what it looks like he promised us, we realized, and this is what we were talking about last week, as Aleph Nun Vav Nun, the Aleph Nun Yod Nun, our increase has been wasted away and degenerated. Why? Well, what did Yahweh tell Israel? I gave you the truth. You only, Israel, have I known. Well, then that's where I need to look. So I was not raised believing I should look at anything Yahweh told Israel. I was raised as a Christian saying, trust Jesus. So I did ditch the lie for the sake of what looks like the truth. Just like anybody else is going to have to do that they're born into any religion. And if you're born a Jew and you say 10 rabbis can outvote the voice of Elohim, you're going to have to lose that too, as far as my reckoning goes. The voice of Elohim. Aleph Samik Tet Lamed Yod He Vav Nun, the stele, the upright gravestone, the marker, like what Solomon apparently had put at the crossing of the Red Sea. That word Samik Tet Lamed, something is moved, shifted out of its place. Like a lamb wandering, where's my place? And here to set in order, arrange, adjust. That's what this language does. It's because of the Mishkan pattern. To adjust to see that the 7 days of creation, the tabernacle Mishkan, the Moedim, letters of the alphabet, the Beatitudes, Daniel 12, they're all identical. It's the same pattern. Moshe couldn't have done that. Yeshua would not have validated if Moshe was a corrupt punk who messed with stuff and ruined everything. Yeshua wouldn't have sat down at the Matthew 5 and given us the Beatitudes correlated to the Mishkan pattern. Yahweh wouldn't have said, here, let me show you something you couldn't have known. A Mishkan pattern. Hey, it's in the heavens and make one on earth. Hey, guess what? I've provided myself these Moedim. These are my chief best adorning bejewelment. Really? Yeah, that's Yahweh. The 7 Moedim identify him as unique, as being exclusive, as being pork, as being not like anybody else. Kadosh, Kadosh, Kadosh. Well, then why does the bride, I keep asking this rhetorical question, why does the bride of the Holy Christian Church, the bride of Christ, not only not recognize their Elohim in the festivals, but reject them as being foul, imposter, not my God? Really? Can't you hear that? Our Elohim is in this language. He's not in Sanskrit. He's not in other languages. He's in this language. He chose this language, proving it by his signature, his autograph of the Mishkan pattern. That's what I see. So then, did the creator of the heavens and earth give Adam something by which to know the truth? Yeah, the 7 days of creation. What do I do with that? I don't know how to use this contraption. Gave him the Mishkan. I don't know how to use that either. Okay, we can offer some sacrifices. Gave him the Modim. How do you use the Modim? Well, just don't work certain days and eat certain foods and get together and have a meeting, a party once in a while on certain days. Yeah, those are all steps, but they don't make any sense unless you pool them all together and realize they're all saying the same thing. And when you realize they're all saying the same thing, what are they saying? That's the proving. At least it is to me. So the guy that was telling me, you should look into these other languages, these other cultures, these other religions. No, here, let me tell you why. No, he doesn't want to hear why. He doesn't want to hear me say it. Okay, fine, I'm not going to tell him. And somebody else, you ask me how I know he lives? He lives within my heart. An old song, Christian song we sang in the Presbyterian church. You ask me how I know he lives. He lives within my heart. Really? The guy living in your heart wants you to worship him on Christmas and Easter and Sunday as this holy day. Is he contradicting the voice of Yahuwah, the Elohim of Israel? Then whoever it is living in your heart is bad proof. Sorry, it may be good enough for Grandma and Grandpa and Uncle Joe and Annie Mae, but sorry, you ask me how I know it's true because what he said lines up with what he wrote and is validated by the 7 days of creation, the Mishkan, the Moedim, and the Beatitudes, amongst, like I said, hundreds of other places. Daniel chapter 12, 1. Could it be that this is the thing like what those guys are saying? The number of people, so many that nobody can count them, dressed in white robes. And what they're saying is, Revelation 17, with this huge voice, solving a problem. Our Elohim, we know we're right because our Elohim solved the problem by separating the kadosh from the halal, the clean from the unclean, the sacred from the profane. He said, do this and don't do that. And instead of we saying, I have a burning in the bosom, or he lives within my heart, I'm going to listen to his words and do what he said. And that's sufficient, Lamed Dalet Yod, because each word, if you break it down, it's perfectly clear. Each word, each letter, all fits and works. And that's this genius throne that he's sitting in. So I'm turning this around. I'm saying that the word upon the throne, Ayin Lamed Kaf Vav Resh Samik Yod Aleph, is to say it's not a picture of a guy with a big belly sitting in a chair eating stuff and dropping crumbs like rats chewing on your frame of your house, but I'm saying the throne he is sitting on. The word upon, Ayin Lamed, is the root of the word for this genius, and the word for eternity, Ayin Lamed Mem, openly, clearly, Ayin Lamed Yod Lamed, clearly, openly, like the word forehead, Mem Zadi Chet, or Bet Ayini. It's all perfectly clear. He is enthroned on his words. Whether I see him walking down the street, whether I turn and see an angel or fly up into heavens, he sits on the throne of these words. And he says his throne is setting on the foundation of Mishpat and Zadika, justice and righteousness. But it's not just justice as a concept and righteousness as a concept. The word for justice, Mishpat, means the balances of scales, meaning everything has to be just right. Like the word ayin, weigh carefully, balance exactly, measure and determine, precision. Everything is precisely, and the word for zadika, righteousness, is also victory, deliverance, and salvation. So there's to being able to calculate exactly that what he said is what it is, and that's who he is. The guy who built it like that, that's where the salvation is. Go back and look at everything he said. So for Yeshua to say, you workers of iniquity, I never knew you, get out of here, go swim in the lake of fire, burn in hell, loser. He'd say that, apparently. Apparently, to not have that said to you, you got to go back and do what he said because he said so and calculate every word by the spelling of words. And that's what these guys are saying in Revelation chapter 7, verse 10. A number of every nation, of every language, they have all come to that conclusion. How do they come to that conclusion? Did they watch this video? They have had to come to this same analysis and decided we're going to ditch the culture we grew up in, our national association, our religious association, our history, whether it's right or wrong, good or bad, good science, bad science, good military, good economics or not, our political leaders, our philosophy, none of that stuff matters. We're going with this. So somehow somebody asked me, do you think this is the last generation? And it's like this scene of these millions of people dressed in white robes with the palm branch saying this sentence, Revelation 7, verse 10, Parkna belongs to the fact that it's the ink that is enthroned as the letters spelling what he said. And we finally realize that that's the ultimate pinnacle, the zenith generation. The zenith. Yesterday, apparently, June 21st was summer solstice, the zenith of the year, the longest day, the sun at its peak, and it was a full moon. So both sun and moon were at a zenith. Shin Yod Aleph is that word that means the highest point, the summit, the pinnacle, the climax. Also the word Zohar. So the book called the Zohar, which is a Kabbalistic occult writing that the Jews have, it also means shining, brilliant. Well, the pinnacle of the sun, where it's like this word, Mem Zadi Het, clear, shining bright, pure, without conflict, without. And when I say enchantment, is because word Nachash, remember the fourth beast of Daniel 7, copper claws. The word copper is also the word Nachash, which means enchantment, no bewitching, iron teeth chewing up. Iron teeth chewing up. That's like what's in your mouth, words. He's turning words into other meanings, like Black's Law Dictionary, Webster's Dictionary, tricking people, ensnaring people with words like a tar pit. Oh, this is perfectly clear. And so this picture in Revelation 10 represents a generation, a whole generation from every language which finally get it. Must be the Paleo-Hebrew. That's what I see. It must be the Paleo-Hebrew. That whole group of people must see what's written in the Paleo-Hebrew. And Elohim saved that for this occasion. And if this then breaks open that generation, then is that where we are? I don't know that this ever happened before. Maybe it did, maybe it didn't, but led, guided, and directed, the hidden cache of arms, this is where your treasure is. It's been hidden, and here he's going to draw it out like Moses, like drawing the bones out of the tar pit, like drawing Moshe out of the Nile River, so we can spell words. That's the next word, Vav, Aleph, Yod, Tav. Belonging here, Lamed, Hey, Chet, Tav, Mem. It's been sealed up. The perfect, the pure has been sealed up until now. Is that the seal of Elohim? It's not just putting an X on your forehead like Manson, Charlie Manson, the murderer. Well, anyway, here we are at the end of the 2 hours, and this solves the problem. Paraklita. Pork, nah. Did he set apart this time? Did he set apart like he set apart Adam, like he set apart Abraham, Moshe, Israel, set apart Jacob from Esau? In his heart, Rachel was set apart from Leah, but there was still a blessing for Leah. There was still a blessing for Ishmael. Yahuwah said to both Cain and Esau, just do the right thing. So I don't believe that Cain was demon spawned, because Yahweh never said so. What he said was, sin's crouching at the door to get you. Just do the right thing. Just do the right thing. Don't give in to that. That's what he's always told us. Just do the right thing. He told us what the right thing is to do. So why won't the church say, just do the right thing? It's under the blood. It's under the blood. Is that what this means? They cleanse their robes, wash them white in the blood of the Lamb. Does that mean just trust Jesus? Or does it mean just do what he said? Can I believe this book? This book looks to me, just so you know, perfect Hebrew spelling of words. Not that that's bad. But why are the words spelled differently in this book, that I can see this in this book, but I won't see it in here? That makes me suspect of this one written from India, just so you know. I got to go with spell the words of everything he said to do, realize that he's never changed his track of thought. The promises are still real. The covenant's just as valid as it ever was. And we can be his people like he promised. And the whole world is about to change for our benefit, for our sake, not like the Christian song and dance of the tribulation. Those coming out of great affliction made their robes right. What is the affliction? Is the affliction the fact that other people are throwing bombs and throwing bullets and arrows? Or is the great affliction this torment of the mental conflict, like that fourth beast chewing up words, stomping with his feet, custom, habit, and tradition and religious order, that which remains that he couldn't capture? I mean, it all makes sense if you start looking at it. The conflict is, am I being lied to, or is this the truth? Like the guy on the internet trying to steal, under the guise of being Apple computers. He's not. He was some charlatan. It's what I can, and in the end, like I said, I started to say the interesting thing when somebody doesn't use proper English syntax, it seems to be a giveaway that there's something wrong. The guy's from another country. He knows the English words, but he doesn't know how to do it right. And it seems like Yahweh's doing the same thing. Do you know what I said? Do you know who I am by what I said? Then can you spot the imposer, the imposter? Well, that's left up to each of our determinations, apparently. Anyway, it's 2.5 hours here. Gotta cut loose.
Okay. Well, we praise thee, Abba. We exalt thy name, thou art glorified, magnified, not by our voices, but by thine own work. And we can't but just be in awe of it and exclaiming, Father, we praise thee and we thank thee for all of creation, with us included. We shall declare your glory, Father. We shall declare thy glory, and we're doing our best to do so now. We praise thee and we thank thee for including us, Abba, in thy Moedim, for making us part of thy bejewelment, for sharing with us just what thou hast prepared. And we ask that thou would continue giving us discernment in order to listen, to really shema, to hear and do what it is that thou hast truly spoken for us to receive. We praise thee, Abba. Thank you. Oh, Yahweh Sevaot. Amen.
Thanks, Carla.